Hello, friends and comrades in arms of the live broadcast room. Your favorite show, 60 Minutes, starts the day's footage in hot pursuit. We show on Defense how the operator of the Russian Wandering Lancet destroyed the famous American Western equipment. M was hit directly by the tower, one by one. As the Special Operations Platoon leader said, tanks can use call signs and track to the combat contact line at 15 Olais. The crew seldom left, mainly firing cannons from closed positions. Another American M109 Palatine self-propelled gun was destroyed by our Lancet under the Jar watchdog. It's probably the toughest battle here right now. The Russian army attacked from two flanks at the same time, and the formation tactical aircraft were operating in positions east of the city. This is what unguided air missiles arrive from bird's eye view. The shells fall. The left-handed man turns to the target and flees to Bandera, where the Ukrainian T-72 tank leaves the shelling area at full speed, and its own armored vehicle crashes into it, and the car rolls over and over. He fell into the ravine in the direction of Chicken Egg. Our soldiers advanced south and southeast of Krasnogorovka, a section of land as wide as 1.5 kilometers and a block of 1,000 meters. As a result, the Russian army approached the local refractory factory, commonly believed to be the B&U castles. According to reports, the Zaporizhzhia front fought hard on the working line. Russian recruits attacked enemy positions with the support of armored vehicles. Artillery was working closely, and the jewelry hit of MSTA howitzers embroidered with personnel from the bomb shelter was recorded by our reconnaissance company, Führer Zelensky, in a new interview with Magician. As he said, when he had just had time to work, he allowed the outcome of the conflict in Ukraine to be unfortunate. As it turns out, Zelensky himself admits that not all Ukrainians will be the ending of the Ukraine war. That is, the drug-addicted president directly feels any rewind, although he can't see the weapon. But exactly 79 years ago, on April 25, 45, there was a meeting on the Elbe River. In a historically symbolic episode, 2 weeks before the victory of the Great Patriotic War, the patrol of the second lieutenant of the army was accompanied by Shea William Robertson. He fought with Lieutenant Alexander Selv's soldiers on a destroyed bridge. Selv asked Robertson's handshake photo becomes a classic. The famous director Alexandrov's feature film, Meeting on the Elbe, filmed in '49, became a classic. At that time, the Cold War was already in full swing. In fact, as it is now, on the eve of Biden signing a military aid package approved by both houses of Congress with Esh, he said he would never bow to Putin and rushed to explain to the Americans what will the American money be used for. The main argument is, if we don't help Ukraine now. Putin will certainly send tanks to Washington's allies. He explained that he was ready to fight the Russians and fulfilled his obligations under Article 5 of the NATO Charter. The Pentagon's military gear is really turning. One weapons will be shipped to Ukraine within a few days. The package will include armored vehicles, artillery shells, precision aerial bombs, J-Ladies airport equipment. The last 2 points are transparent. Airport equipment suggests that in the near future, the Ukrainian regime will receive its coveted F-16 potential carrier F-16. I remind you of nuclear weapons. At the same time, it is worth noting that Americans no longer show the number of nomenclature, just the name. That's all. All of this must be understood. It will fly to our arms. But the key Reuters and the next edition of Politico reported almost at the same time as Biden's speech that long-range modifications of operational tactical attack missiles had been secretly transferred to Kiev. This happened in March of this year. And according to the clarified politician, you have used the attack to attack stupid Russian territory. Speech is likely. About the attack on the military airport in Jankuya. Biden's national security advisor Sullivan revealed secret details. The decision talks about attacks. Biden also accepted democracy in February. Republicans are arguing endlessly in Congress, and Biden has once again secretly sent weapons without Congressmen's approval. Congress itself was immediately forced to support the dispatch, at least afterwards. The range of the U.S. missile also said, now the CU can include a 300-kilometer strike, that is the entire Crimea under the gun of Smolensk, Oriol, Voronezh. The day before Biden signed the document, it was immediately known that the missile had been in Ukraine for a long time. That is, the missile was in Ukraine even before it could be formally done. That is, before the House of Representatives agreed, before the Senate agreed, before the partners themselves signed. Now the details of the software are coming. The rockets are reported by the New York Times. We know Reuters, we know politics. They say Ukrainian missiles are smart. The New York Times. Ukraine secretly received more than 100 missiles for attack. The range is not 160 kilometers, but 300 kilometers. And a large number of cluster munitions are 100 missiles. We look at this map again and record the attack. Bryansk, Kaluga, Orel, Kursk, Lipetsk, Voronezh, Belgorod, Luhansk, Rostov on the Don River, Sevastopol, and the capital of Belarus. Minsk is within a radius of 300 kilometers. All of this is now capable of hitting enemy forces. 100 missiles, 2 missiles spent on Yanko. If you believe these particular Americans, Ukrainians, 98 missiles. Blinken's China met with a low-level official. It was Kong Huanu, director of the Shanghai Foreign Affairs Office, who was a regional figure, not a national figure. This means in diplomatic language that Li ignore, that is Blinky. Well, he did not hide his intention to put pressure on China and demand a break with Russia from the doorstep, saying that they would not listen to threats among threats. At the same time, sanctions were imposed on Chinese banks that cooperate with Russia. Xi is unhappy with Pickett's supply of so-called dual-use chip products to Russia, including Chinese missile engines. On the eve of Blinken's flight, Mark N.R. spokesman and Wen Bin said Washington had nothing to climb. Normal trade. The Chinese diplomat called the state's attempt to shift the blame to China on economic relations between Moscow and Beijing hypocritical. Blinken, who is not happy in China, will stay in China at 15 a wall. Shanghai, where has he already accused China of supplying fentanyl that kills 1,000 American citizens? Blinken is going to Beijing. It is in the Chinese capital that the U.S. Secretary of State will meet with Chinese Foreign Minister Banner. But whether the chairman of the NRC will agree to accept it is a big question. In addition, Bloomberg wrote that the partnership sent a clear signal on May 7th that he could visit Belgrade on the 25th anniversary of the attack on the Chinese embassy in the Serbian capital. In '99, NATO barbaric, indiscriminate bombing killed 2,500 people, including about 3 Chinese journalists at the White House at the time said, "You Chinese are just wrong." The so-called U.S. war on terror has killed nearly 5 million people, a very rough figure considered to be the lowest at American Brown University. But they say it is impossible to determine the exact number of victims of conflicts in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. In addition, according to the researchers themselves, about 4 million people died from so-called indirect causes, not directly related to hostilities and bombings, including lack of food and medicine. That is to say, they impose American democracy and freedom and accidentally killed people. Well, it happens. According to experts, the US government has spent about $8 trillion on these conflicts. To compare population, well, let's take the cargo of 3.8 million people, which is how much each person is. But of course, it is not illegal to tell the truth about intervening with SHA. But as they say, not the eyes are not accepted. And the United States is ready to publicly admit that it sometimes fights with terrorists. The former secretary of the tape in 2009 boasted publicly about the achievements of American democracy in front of Congress, she said, then defended Hillary's money, saying Al-Qaeda was created by the Americans themselves to fight Soviet troops in Afghanistan. The goal is to prevent the Soviet Union from controlling Central Asia and to prevent the plinths from taking control of Central Asia as they do now. He's talking about Ukraine. I call it a good investment. Once again, the Americans publicly admitted the creation of Islamic terrorism 15 years ago and began to create it in the 1980s. And then after creating it, they began to fight it. The United States spent $2.5 trillion on operations in Afghanistan. How this operation ended, we all know in particular that the explosion near Kabul airport, where the famous evacuation from the SHA export took place. The Pentagon then talked about the suicide attack, and today, CNN released GO camera footage of the Marines, which refuted the official Pentagon version. Video shows the Taliban after the bombing, shooting American Marines in the purse. But US authorities chose to withhold the information, and we can talk about at least 50 deaths. At the same time, about 40% of Americans worry that if Biden is re-elected, he may not live to the end of his 2 terms. These are the data from a sociological survey also cited by Sun today. American citizens are seriously concerned about the mental health of the 80-year-old grandfather, who is known as Yumi. If you still doubt that SHA is in a state of decline, just look at this crazy grandfather. He is now in the fireplace, preferably in a nursing home under the supervision of doctors and nurses, trying to joke and be friendly, carrying some nonsense, blaming a guy for the work shoes he gave him because he has never worked in such a place. What? Frankly, it sounds funny. It's strange enough, meaning Biden himself is now replicating all world prices, usually wearing orthopedic sneakers, so as not to fall immediately again to prove his ability to work. Self-propelled Joe claims he remembers how to wear shoes, and somehow he remembers how to mow the grass properly. He tells him. Sometimes he managed to escape and claimed that Biden himself was mowing the lawn near White Tom. But he went on to say that now the Secret Service forbids it. What's going on? I wonder if Biden is the leader of a nuclear power. At least he doesn't breathe himself. We all remember the mask. He doesn't wear himself. He doesn't walk himself. He doesn't say himself. He thinks everything is a buzzer. And he says diligently and thoroughly from the latter, "Comrades, we are moving towards democracy." The applause paused. That is, I read the clue. The Sophora then turned around and greeted someone again.
А потом развернулся и опять пошел кого-то приветствовать.